What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football this season, and I will also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish every single team in a specific conference, just as a synopsis of all of my schedule predictions for that individual conference. And those conference ones will be coming later on in August towards the start of the season. We're getting close there. I've got a lot of videos to put out before we get to that point, but yeah, those will be coming towards the end there. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into this one with the Georgia Tech schedule predictions. So just some quick thoughts on the Georgia Tech program heading into 2022. And this is a program that has just been severely down in recent years, and everybody knew that once they let go of Paul Johnson, it would be a massive uphill battle for them as a program. Changing from the triple option offense to a spread offense under Jeff Collins, they just don't have the personnel for it. It's going to take years to really even build up your reserves of personnel for that. I mean, they just didn't have the wide receivers and tight ends and stuff like that. So we knew that was going to be a tough transition, and that's proven true so far. And now they have had some bright spots on the roster, but none of it has really yielded very good on-the-field results yet. And now that Jahmyr Gibbs is transferred out of the program, he brought a lot of that offensive firepower with him, as he was by far their best player. And Jeff Sims has shown some flashes of brilliance, but he hasn't been able to put it all together yet. And to me, that's sort of emblematic of the program as a whole. There's been a lot of potential, a lot of promise around there, but nothing has really come together into a tangible on-field product yet that fans can really be happy with and be proud of. And unfortunately, I just don't see that, really coming together in 2022 either. I mean, the schedule is pretty brutal for Georgia Tech. They draw Georgia as their in-state rival every year. They just don't have the roster to be able to compete with some of the teams they have on their schedule. So let's go ahead and look at some of these games and then start with the ones that really aren't worth talking about, because those opponents just don't have much of a chance of winning, barring something catastrophic. And there's only one of those for Georgia Tech, and that is Western Carolina. So Georgia Tech opens the season on a Monday up against the Clemson Tigers in Atlanta in Mercedes-Benz. And this is one where, despite the fact that I don't think Georgia Tech is going to be very good, I'm very interested in this game. I think Clemson, two new coordinators, potentially a new quarterback, a lot of questions around the team. We know they're going to be very good, but there's a lot of unknown, and then that week one is really your window where you could maybe see some slip-ups. Plus, Georgia Tech in week one is still going to be full of hope. They're going to be in Super Bowl mode. They've had an offseason to where if they want to prep extra for this game, they can. And it's in a primetime slot on a Monday game. Very interesting game. Very excited for this game. I do think Clemson wins this probably by 2-3 scores. But I think early on Georgia Tech could give them some trouble, and that is very interesting to me. I'm very excited to see how all of that plays out. Hopefully Georgia Tech can give them a good game so we can all get a good game to watch. I do think Clemson ends up pulling away pretty big in this one. And then week 3, Georgia Tech plays Ole Miss, and they play them at home, but Ole Miss is dramatically better than Georgia Tech. They're probably not as good as Clemson, but they're not far off of it, and they're much better than Georgia Tech across the board. They're just a better team. And even though Georgia Tech's at home, they're not going to have much of a home field advantage here. That's going to sway the game one way or the other. And Georgia Tech, for a team that's, kind of as down as they are, they certainly are not shy about scheduling tough out-of-conference games like the Ole Miss game, because, you normally with a team like this, you see them schedule more of those Western Carolina types and not these Ole Miss types. But here they are, and I have to respect it, but I do think Ole Miss gets a pretty easy win there in week 3. In week 4, you get another interesting and tough out-of-conference game. They go at UCF, and this is one that is very interesting to me. UCF, technically a G5. They're going to be a Power 5 team in a year or two. I forget how, what exact year they moved to the Big 12. But they're going to be a Power 5 team here soon. They've got Gus Malzahn. UCF is a very good team. I think they're about probably equal with Georgia Tech, maybe slightly better. But I think Georgia Tech comes in here and they get a big win. I don't know if it's really an upset win. I'm not sure where the line's going to be, who's going to be favored, but I think it's going to be a very close game between two pretty similarly ranked teams. And I think Georgia Tech gets a solid win here. They're going to need to get a solid win here if they want to have any hope at a decent season. This is a game they could very, very well lose. UCF, you could argue, is better than them in a lot of ways. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. I'm going to give Georgia Tech the benefit of the doubt and give them the win there, but I'm not too terribly confident in that one. And then they go at Pitt, and this is one where they're just going to be outmatched. Pitt is just a noticeably better team than them, and they're going to be competitive. Again, I think that's going to be your trend for most all of these games. You're going to see Georgia Tech be very competitive. They're going to fight hard. Second half, they're going to get blown out a little bit. They're going to get teams starting to separate and pull away just because they're just not as good as those teams are, And like I said, they're going to fight hard, going to have a close game, not one that you want to just take lightly if you're the opposing team, but at Pitt, they're just not as good. They're probably going to lose that game. I've got them losing that game there. And then next week, they play Duke. And now this is one where Georgia Tech is genuinely a better team. They're a better team than Duke. They get them at home. This is kind of two of your bottom teams of the conference almost going at it. And I'm interested to see how this one plays out. I do think Georgia Tech gets the win. They are at home. They are a little bit better team in my opinion, but a pretty evenly matched game in my thoughts as well. So I give it to Georgia Tech, but one that could also end up going either way as well. Then they get a bye week before playing Virginia. And Virginia, probably not a great team next year by any means, but they're going to be better than Georgia Tech. I've got Virginia getting the win there. It's on a Thursday, which is sort of an interesting little note. The ACC does a lot of these weirdly scheduled Thursday, Friday, Monday, Sunday games. I'm not a huge fan of some of that, but it'll be interesting to watch. I'll probably be able to see it when I wouldn't have before, but just because it's on a Thursday. I do still think Virginia gets the win, though. Then they go at Florida State. Florida State's better than them as a roster. It's on the road. There's just not much to talk about, really, for a lot of these Georgia Tech matchups. They're just not as good as the teams they're playing here. I have Florida State getting the win there. Same with the next game at Virginia Tech. They're closer to Virginia Tech. Maybe you could see an upset. I think they'll be competitive, but again, Virginia Tech is better than them. They're on the road in a very tough environment. I think Virginia Tech gets a big win there. Then they play Miami, who I think is going to be much, much better than them. I just don't see Georgia Tech putting up much of a fight there. They'll probably, again, stay competitive through those first halves. They're a hard-fighting team, and that's something you can always say about them under Jeff Collins. They're not a team that just gives up, but also they're just not as good as the teams they're playing. And then you have at North Carolina, same story, just a team better than them. They're going to fight them hard. They're not going to be as good as them. They're probably going to pull away in the second half. Got North Carolina winning that one big. And then they end the year at Georgia, who's probably, well, not probably, they are the best team they're going to play next season, and they're not going to win that one either. It's a rivalry game, but it's not one that's been very close the last couple of years, really. Really, you can go back a good while. And they're just not on, even in the same category as Georgia as a team. They're going to fight hard. They're going to be scrappy, but they're not going to be able to hang around for very long in that one either. I've got them losing that one as well. And so that would make Georgia Tech 3-9 on the season, and honestly, it could be 2-10 if the UCF game, if they lose that one. That's an incredibly close, very losable game for them, all things considered. And honestly, Duke isn't a pushover for them either. They could potentially lose that one as well. Now, maybe Georgia Tech, if things go the other way and go on the good side, maybe they can get a win over Virginia at home and maybe pull off another upset somewhere along the schedule. But they're likely probably going to get one upset somewhere. I would think probably on like a Virginia type of team. But I just can't. I can't really predict them to do that. They're just not good enough for me to pick a game and be like that's the one they're gonna upset that team. I don't see it. They might get one just because there's so many games that I think they're going to be good enough to compete in. And, maybe you catch a team sleeping, but I can't predict them to do better than maybe 3, maybe 4 wins at best. So I'm going to go with 3-9. And honestly, that's kind of disappointing because I do think there's going to be improvement from Georgia Tech. And I think they can really compete in some of these games. But the rest of the conference is improving as well. And they don't have any easy out-of-conference games except that Western Carolina one. And I just don't see a big difference maker on the Georgia Tech roster that will be able to lead them in some of these wins. So until I see either something more from their roster or from their coaching staff, 3-9 is where I have them. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you agree and or disagree with me on the Georgia Tech schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think that they'll have next year and who, if anybody, they'll lose to. Also, if you made it this far in the video, be sure to go ahead and leave a like. It helps out the channel tremendously. And subscribe to the channel as well for more college football content in the future. Like I said, I'm doing a video on every single Power 5 team. I'm going to have a synopsis on every conference. So be on the lookout for those. I've got a lot. They're going to be coming out soon just because the timeline is starting to crunch down. We're getting close to the season. And check out some of my other ones that are already up if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.